Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about Joseph William Hardey, an important individual in the history of Perth. Joseph William Hardey was an influential figure in the early history of Perth. He was an expert farmer who cultivated land near the Swan River. He also pioneered Wesleyan Methodism, and he strongly believed in the education of Indigenous Australians. Beginning. Joseph Hardey was born on the 29th of April 1804 in Lincolnshire, in modern-day England's northeast. He was the third son of 15 children. He married his wife Anne in 1829, when he was 25 and she was 21. The long journey. 1 month after marrying, the Hardeys departed England on the Tranby to head towards the Swan River Colony, or what is now known as Western Australia. The newly married couple were also accompanied by Joseph's two brothers, John and William. And here is a quote by a passenger from that voyage. "The moon is nearly perpendicular and shines so brilliantly that we can read its light." November 11, 1829. What does perpendicular mean? Tranby. Here is the Tranby. The ship was about 8 metres wide, nearly 26 metres long, and 5.2 metres deep. It filled up quickly with aspiring immigrants. The Tranby was about as long and wide as 2 modern buses. Can you imagine only having that much space for 57 people, along with cows, horses and pigs, whilst travelling by boat from England to Australia? And here is a modern-day replica of the Tranby named Lady Washington. Here is an advertisement for the journey, which was in a newspaper in England. "For the new settlement on Swan River, New Holland, Tranby. To accommodate passengers, will positively clear on the 25th and sail on the 27th instant. Now lying in the old dock, newly coppered and fitted up in a superior manner with a capacious roundhouse for the accommodation of passengers, many of whom are engaged. She has capital heights, being 6 feet 10 inches between the decks, and will carry an experienced surgeon. Immediate application is desired, and the terms of the passage, also important information relative to the colony, may be had by applying, if by letter, post-paid, to George Locking." And this was dated July 20th, 1829. Arrival at last. The Tranby left in early September and saw land at noon on the 2nd of February 1830. They rounded Rottnest Island and came about the Swan River mouth the following day. And here is an artist's impression of Fremantle from 1830, and another artist's impression of the early settlements by the colonists. The Peninsula. The immigrants on the Tranby were Methodists, so Protestants, which is a type of Christian, and they settled together on a 512-acre block which they called the Peninsula, at the Swan River's banks, at what we now call Maylands. The first Tranby house was built in 1830, shortly after the Hardey brothers left the struggling settlement of Fremantle, though the house that is going to be pictured in the following slide was actually the third house built on the property, and it was built in 1839. The land. Joseph Hardey had found the land to be inferior to much of the land higher up the Swan River, but he decided that it might be made to suit the general purposes of agriculture. What does agriculture mean? A picture is worth 1,000 words. Now, whilst this picture doesn't have anything specific to do with the Swan River Colony or the Hardeys, it shows what maps looked like around this time before Australia was discovered, and it shows that the level of detail and the level of knowledge was very different to explorers in those times compared to now. Here is another angle of the property at Peninsula Farm, Tranby House. Where have we heard the word Tranby before? Joseph's character. Joseph had very high moral standards and was strongly against duelling, which he described the participants as wretched murderers. And he was also against horse racing, because he believed that that was everything that was bad, betting and drunkenness. He also founded the Total Abstinence Society, where in this context, abstinence means not having any alcohol. He demanded high standards and a great amount of effort from his people. He was also a very spiritual man and won admiration for his sympathetic service in visiting the sick, irrespective of their background. He also believed that the majority of the immigrants knew nothing of farming, though he strongly believed in hard work, and he had faith in the future of the new colony, as can be seen by his following quote. "There is little doubt but it will succeed, and well, if it receives the encouragement and support which all colonies need in their infancy." What does infancy mean? Riverside Farm. Here is an image of a riverside farm, and this is important to have a look at and take a mental note of some of the things that this farm has, as it will have to do with today's activity that all students will need to carry out. Time at the peninsula. Joseph cultivated wheat, rye and oats and many garden vegetables, and then later moved on to horses, grapes, olives, almonds and flour milling. He also founded the Agricultural Society in 1831 to share knowledge and voice concerns to those facing the rural areas. He set up Wesleyanism in Western Australia with his brother and helped fund the first Wesleyan Methodist Church in Perth in 1842. He was greatly disturbed by the encounter with the natives down at the river, of what we know in modern times as the Pinjarra Massacre, and he advocated for the education and conversion of Aboriginal people in the colony. Joseph lived at Peninsula Farm until his death in 1875, leaving more than £12,000 to the Methodist Church. Today's exercise will be to construct a bird's eye view diagram of what 1830 to 1870s riverside farming would look like. Please make sure to label the different parts of your farm, that way we can see clearly what they are, and also don't be afraid to be creative and to add colour to your illustration. But please remember that we're trying to showcase what a riverside farm could look like and could have in the times of Joseph Hardey, from the 1830s to the 1870s. Thank you so much for being at this presentation, and best of luck with today's activity.